Welcome to the Jeff Knows Inc. Entrepreneurial Podcast with your host, Jeff Lopes. Jeff has over 2 decades experience as a serial entrepreneur, building brands like Kimura from his home basement to a multi-million-dollar global brand that has sold over 250,000 pairs of boxing gloves. Jeff's here to educate, guide, and drive you on the process of bringing your ideas and dreams to reality with the inspiring stories from some of the top business minds.
Welcome to episode number 13 from the Jeff Knows Inc. podcast. I'm your host, Jeff Lopes. This week's guest is Eddie Pinero. Eddie is a former D1 athlete turned entrepreneur who founded The World Within. The World Within creates some of the most inspirational online content you guys will ever find. Incredible story, incredible person. Sit back and enjoy. We are live. Welcome to the Jeff Knows Inc. podcast. I'm your host, Jeff Lopes. We have today a very special guest with us, Eddie Pinero. Eddie is a motivational speaker, does motivational videos, keynote speaker. He's a jack of all trades, and I'm excited to have him on today to learn a little bit about Eddie and just to get to know any insight he has towards helping entrepreneurs and getting us through this little pandemic and whatnot. Eddie, say hello to everyone.
Hey, what's up, Jeff? Thanks for having me on, man. This is awesome.
I appreciate you coming on, buddy. I always start off by letting the audience kind of get to know Eddie and get to know who you are, what you're doing currently.
Yeah, sure. So I guess without giving my whole life story, so I started a platform called Your World Within, where essentially I try and help others, via storytelling mindset, just help people see the world differently. And so this stemmed from, kind of doing the usual trajectory where at school, college, corporate America, realizing I didn't like it, and trying to transfer, into a world where I could be more creative, where I could make music, where I could write, where I could, just use video, dive into that side of things. And that's sort of where the idea came from. It was the first time I didn't have a paycheck. I didn't have all these things. And so I started to write kind of speeches about the process and what I was learning as a creative, as an entrepreneur. And it really resonated with people. And so that's, to answer your question, that's when the light bulb went off. I was like, that's where I can combine all the things I love into a passion, into a business, and just kind of took it from there.
Okay, when did this all start? When did The World Within, when did it all come together? What year?
About 5 years ago.
About 5 years ago.
2015-ish.
Yeah. 2015-ish. So what, in your journey getting there, did you have any other businesses? Were you an entrepreneur prior to this? Were you trying different stuff, or this was your first step into being an entrepreneur?
Yeah, this was my first step. I went right from, the financial industry to
How many years did you work in the financial industry?
Almost 4, or actually a little over 4. Yeah. And
you're currently, we were talking to this prior, you're currently living in South Florida?
I am, yep. A little bit north of Miami.
A little north of Miami. And Eddie is originally from Boston. So a little change of scenery and a little change of weather. When did you move to Florida?
3 years ago.
3 years ago. Very cool.
So still new.
So let's get a little insight of your world within. What aspects of the business do you do? How do you provide? What services do you offer and stuff like that?
Yeah, so it's first and foremost a digital platform. Like the part that I love the most and that's most important to me is the content creation. Right. So it's creating videos on YouTube that allow me to reach an audience. I have a few podcasts that I do, a daily one, Your World Within, and then a books to business podcast where every week we take a book and we kind of dive into that, interview the author. And then, so that's the part that I love. That's where I invest most of my time. And as you can imagine, that's, the other aspects of my business are a derivative of that. Right. So the consulting, the video creation, the keynote speaking. I look at the content as sort of the hub of that wheel, and that's how I like to run my business. That's my sweet spot as a creator.
I was watching some of your videos. I'm going to be putting a link at the end of the our podcast and a few links to contact Eddie, but also to see some of his videos. They're amazingly creative, very inspiring videos. Very. Do you work with brands and companies with your videos?
I do. Yeah.
And how do you do it? Is it more of a creative side? Do they give you a platform to work with? Like, how does it all come together? Do you work with their creative team, or is they give you the free for all for creating these videos?
Yeah, so generally there would be some type of launch or some type of messaging, mostly external, but sometimes internal. And I'll help kind of craft that message, similar to how I do my own videos, right? Where you're taking a story or a concept, because people are, more emotional than they are rational, right? So it's telling a story in a way that really cuts to the core and helps people understand. And so, yeah, from the client side of things, that tends to be what it is: a release, some type of communication.
Now, I was going through a little of your history, Eddie, and your inspiration started, I guess you could say, with when you were in college. Which college did you go to? What school?
Holy Cross in Worcester, Massachusetts.
Holy Cross in Worcester, Massachusetts. So you eventually got into a Division One as an athlete. What sports did you play?
Crew. So I was a rower.
Very, very good. Did you have inspirations for going Olympic?
No, I didn't. For me, it was more like the things that I learned from crew at the time are ultimately where all this stuff came from, right? The idea that, you can work hard and still not get a result. Like it was the manifestation of everything that came after. I think you can draw a parallel from there to entrepreneurship. And so it's funny when I look back at my time at Holy Cross, like I think of rowing as the most valuable time. I had no ambitions to do anything from it after school, but it's the crux of everything I do now. So I'm incredibly grateful for it.
So with that, obviously fitness and health and lifestyles is a huge part of your everyday journey. I also saw your endurance. Are you currently endurance running?
I run. Yep.
Is that something you do on a daily basis?
Almost. Yeah. I love distance running, and it's the same parallel, right? Where it's like one of these things that ties directly into life. I mean, that's one of the beautiful things about running.
So Eddie, as I always ask everybody this, Eddie, as a 10-year-old, if you're talking to you about, if you could look back at yourself as a 10-year-old, did you have inspirations or aspirations to be an entrepreneur? Did you ever think you're going to be doing this on your own? Like how were you as a child? Were you very curious, very, very hustler?
Well, I love sports. I love being out there. I love creating. I love music. But, and this is sort of part of growth is I didn't learn to ask myself what that meant. You know what I mean? Like it's almost like a pivot from what should I do next to what can I do next. And so, yeah, I loved the same things, but I would say it wasn't until my early 20s that I thought, hey, like I can actually dive into them fully. Like I don't need to do what everyone else is doing, and that's where the transition happened.
With your life within, how do you utilize that towards like helping entrepreneurs?
So your world within is perspective. It's mindset, right? So that is the foundation for everything. It's funny. I go to some of these conferences and I hear, people talk about accumulating wealth or, going right to the surface level things. And it's like, fine, I get that. But I've always viewed the financial piece as a consequence of how you're looking at the world, right? How are you looking at value? How are you looking at, your place within things? Because ultimately value is what makes the world go round. And it's what are you doing that you love, and is it helping other people? And once you have those pillars in place, then you focus on monetizing that. But I feel like so many people skip the first step and they get frustrated. And so that's what your world within is. It's like little epiphanies, little stories that, ups and downs along the way that I think would help anyone in any concept. Like as entrepreneurs, contextually we go through different things, but on the surface they're similar, right? I mean, we 100%. Have the same. So that's it in a nutshell. Something to put in your back pocket and utilize when you most need it.
Do you have a step process that you go through? Like if you were to sit in front of an entrepreneur that's right now, let's dive into the pandemic. Everybody's going through stress. Everybody's going through financial stress. Small businesses right across North America are struggling like they've never have. How would you set almost like a platform or a step process to get their mind set to start moving forward?
Yeah, well, I think it's understanding a few things. There are certain things that you can't control, and it's understanding that and knowing what you can control. And also it's like there's opportunity in our worst moments, and that's what people miss. It's like even in our most dire situations, there's something positive that you can take, that you can pull from it. And so, maybe this is an opportunity to start that business that you've always wanted to start. And I'm not saying you come out of this thing a multimillionaire. I'm saying you start a business page on Facebook, or you do something small and start incrementally moving. Like the one thing we always talk about is our lack of time. And so what this is going to expose, is that really true, right? Because there's one thing everyone has right now, and it's time. And so there's that piece. And then again, it's, I know a lot of people are going through some very difficult things, right? 30 million unemployed, big picture, understanding what you can and can't do and just taking it day by day, right? One positive thing every day. There's no sense getting wrapped up in that which you can't control. And I think that would be my main message.
Those are all key points. So as a guest keynote speaker, how busy are you? Like, are you, I mean, obviously things have slowed down with the pandemic, but are you on the road quite a bit? Are you traveling? Do you do more engagements around Florida area?
Nationally, usually 5 or 6 times a month. I don't like to travel too much because again, my energy is creating. So it's being in my studio and making content that I believe in, that I hope to captivate and reach people. So, which is great because obviously, the last 2 months, keynote speaking has been just not a thing, right?
Yeah.
So a lot of
and it might not be a thing for a little while as well, right?
It's very true. Yeah, most likely. So it's an opportunity to triple down on other things, right? Grow the digital space. The Your World Within Daily podcast is something that didn't exist 2 months ago. And so there's opportunity. Like I said, in any dark moment, if you look hard enough, there's something you can grasp to and use to leverage.
Current podcast you said you just released a few months ago. Is it strictly yourself? You're bringing on guests? Is a more motivational aspect of it? And do you give tips to entrepreneurs? Like, what is the aspect of your podcast you currently do?
Yeah, so it's mindset, motivation. It's quick, 5 to 6 minutes, and it's one idea or thought every morning that you can kind of take with you throughout your day. I haven't had a guest. I was thinking about doing maybe a Sunday special or something like that.
So you release an episode every day?
Every morning. Yeah.
Okay, very good. I'm going to be putting obviously the links to all this as well. You also said you had a podcast,
Books to Business.
Books to Business. You want to go and dive into that a bit?
Yeah, so that is just been an amazing experience because so I have a business partner and a producer, so 3 of us for that podcast, and every week we read a book, and it's transformed my life. I mean, it's like a second college education. And so the idea is we read a book, we do a podcast, and now this has been a shift. We're reaching out and getting the author. So this week we did Man's Search for Meaning, and we had Viktor Frankl's grandson on, who now sort of carries, Viktor's torch and tries to deliver that message. And so got some further insight into what he does. And it's been great. It's been really fun.
So you bring the author on or somebody instituted with the book on a regular basis. That's your goal.
Yes.
That's very cool.
Yep.
Very, 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 very cool. And how long has that podcast been up and running?
Books to Business is about 5 months. They're both relatively new,
It's reaching your audience you want?
It is, yeah. Yeah. The interesting thing, so the Your World Within Daily is growing significantly faster because there's really no pivot from my stuff on YouTube. It's like, hey guys, if you like this, there's more of it, and people are going over there, quickly. The Books to Business, it's tough to explain the value of reading a book a week. You know what I mean? Like, It's people don't have the time or don't think they have the time. And so, it's really explaining and emphasizing the value. Like, my hack has been, I run every day, and I usually run 7-8 miles, and it's all audio. So I say reading, I guess, in air quotes, because I'm putting the Audible on 2.0 speed and finishing a book in about 2 or 3 days. So that's how, otherwise I wouldn't be able to do it. But
I think people pass the opportunity. I mean, reading and is like you said, it's a way of re-educating yourself, relearning. You could always learn. I'm a strong believer, Eddie, that the day you die is the day you stop learning, right? So it's one of the passions where you have to constantly, every day you should be learning something. You should be educating yourself, whether it's a simple little thing or something you dive into deeper, whether you're continuing your education, whether you're reading, whether you're learning off, like I'm learning off you today, you constantly want to be learning and passing on your knowledge at the same time as well, which is so, so important. And a lot of people, they said they get into the busy lives with their children, with their families, and they don't understand the importance of reading. And that's something I love books. I love, and we have our bookstores here are called Chapters and I love going to the bookstore. I love grabbing just a hard copy piece of a book and spending, even if it's 15, 20 minutes, the end of the night or in the afternoon, just grab a book and just read. Yeah. I always grab a highlighter and I highlight stuff in the book that I find that's something if I ever want to go back to and just like a little note in there So it's such a huge part of my life. So I appreciate that aspect in your podcast. That's pretty cool. Have you had any mentors or anybody guide you or get you through to this stage, or somebody that you really look back to and say, this person really made a difference in my life?
Yeah, I have. And I found, well, actually, first, let me just say the book thing, I couldn't agree with you more. I think one of the things that's eye opening is millennials don't read.
No,
They don't.
at all.
And
at
so,
all.
and so whether like the last thing I want to do is kind of wag my finger and say, books are like the idea, to your point, I think you said it beautifully. It's learning. And if that happens to be YouTube or just consume some type of information, expand yourself the way you think. Don't create a wall around how you see the world, because I feel like that contributes to a lot of our problems right now. So I just loved how you said that. I want to emphasize that. But in terms of my mentors, I feel like they kind of came, like I've acquired them along the way. So it's people that, have reached out. So for example, I got an email, I think 3 years ago now, which is insane to say. Someone says, Eddie, do you have an accountability buddy? I'm like, the hell is that? I don't know. What are you talking about? He's like, every morning at 5 a.m., we'll text each other a motivational quote, make sure we're up, going after it. The guy's one of my best friends now. He was a lawyer.
That is awesome.
It's amazing.
This was out of the blue. Some guy, did you know him prior?
No, cold email from Ohio. And
that's awesome.
He's been one of, my greatest inspirations in life. Just started a business a couple of years ago, and it's already, taken off.
Do you mind me asking what he does?
Yeah. So it's a manufacturing company. And so he's got
apparel, soft goods, hard goods. What is it?
All that.
You could throw in a little shout out to it. What is it? What's the name of the company?
Oh my God, he's gonna kill me. Mark One Manufacturing. Yeah, so they're
put you on that.
Really good.
Put you on the spot there, buddy.
Yeah, I was like Mark One. So that's been great. That's been reciprocal. I got an email to write a speech for the CEO of Airborne. His name's Rod, or he's the founder of Airborne. And I always tell this story. He said, I'm doing a keynote. Will you write it for me? And I was like, sure. And I'm doing research. I'm like, wow, this guy's a pretty big deal. I was excited this is years ago, right? Yeah. So at that point, as an entrepreneur, you're just hungry. You want to expand your circle. And he flies in. We're at the Margaritaville down the street, and he talks about what he needs. And he basically goes, all right, here's what I want. Like, what's it going to cost? And I say, Rod, dude, I don't care. It's just fine. I'm excited to be, partners with you, working with you, whatever. And he looks at me and goes, Eddie, be a fucking salesman. He's like, you will never be worth more than how you value yourself. And like things like that, when you put value out into the world, they just seem to come back.
Let's go back to that. I love that saying. Let's dive more into that. That's something a lot of people don't understand. Like we're talking prior to the show, and one thing I've done for the last few years is give back to young entrepreneurs. I don't charge nothing, and it's more guiding them to get in the right direction with their business, whether it's full startup or just redirecting their company to get them to more customers, whatever it is. I'm always trying to assist entrepreneurs. I've never charged nothing. And it's not that I don't put a value on it. To me, it's more of the mindset. I've done well enough that it's almost my way of giving back. And through that process, I do value it, because I do realize that all this knowledge I'm passing on, it's a spider web. It's continually spreading. That person's going to tell another person, another person. So eventually, when I started a podcast, or I started to, maybe in 5 years, I want to do a full consulting company, it's all going to come back to me. The value will be there because the word of mouth, because how I inspired or pushed or drive or got these young entrepreneurs in the right direction. So there is a value there. And I always thought about it for the long-term value of it. So I love that part where you're saying the value. You want to dive into that a bit more?
Yeah. I mean, it was the first time leaving that conversation where it was like, he wrote me a check for more than I've ever made at that point. And I'm leaving, right, driving out of the garage, and I have the check in my hand. And I'm like, I was less excited about the check than I was about the fact that it's like,
opportunity.
I could literally say I'm worth this and the world conforms. Yeah. Like it was just a really cool thing. But, to your point, yeah, it's like, that's what I was saying earlier, jumping to money right away. And I don't dislike money. That's not my point. But when your focus is how can I bring value to the world? How can I help people around me? How can I be a better version of myself? Because when, the stars align, when you find the in between what you love to do and what helps the world, and good things just come your way. And I can't emphasize that enough. The long-term game of adding value is so much more than a quick buck. And I'll always stand by that.
No, that's awesome. You guys still every mornings text each other?
Yeah. Well, he's got a couple factories in China. So he's been going through some he's actually been doing better now, but obviously there's some tweaks he's got to make. So I haven't been talking to him recently, maybe in the past month, but it's the first time, where we catch up maybe once a week now instead of every day, but it would be a picture at the gym, a quote, something pulled from online, something like that.
That's very cool. Very cool. Anybody else, like family wise, did you ever have any entrepreneurs in your family?
I didn't. I did more military. My grandfather was an admiral in the Navy. My father's a major in the Army. So I moved around a lot and, So
let's play around with that. Where did you move around? Right across the U.S.? Did you go overseas?
Yeah, I was born in Japan. I wasn't there for very long.
Okay.
Yeah. It's pretty cool. Yokosuka on a naval base. And
have you ever been back?
I haven't.
Okay.
I got to do that. So it was there, and then it was Virginia Beach, and then I lived in Phoenix. I grew up in LA. I spent maybe 10 years. And then came back over here for high school, college, went to Roanoke, Virginia after that for a few years, back up to Massachusetts, and now down here. So all over the place, all over the United States, I should.
How much of an inspiration were your parents in getting you to where you are?
Everything. From just they are the most selfless people I've ever met. And so, they shaped my worldview. And so as I'm going through this as an entrepreneur, like I remember the worst thing starting out is like not wanting to disappoint the people that have given up so much for you. I think that's the hardest part when you leave, in my case, right? Leaving the sort of sure path, a good job, the corporate world. And now my back's against a wall and I'm like producing acoustic music and they're like, Eddie, what's going on? Right. And you just don't want to let them down. And then you fast forward a few years, and it's just, no matter what I went through, I can look back and at every point along the way, they were the ones that supported me when no one else did. And all my supposed friends from, high school and college dropped off. They were there. And it's I owe them. I always talk about the metaphor of being in bed. This is morbid, but it has a purpose, right? So if you're in bed, hospitalized, you're super sick, you have a few days to live, who's going to be by the bed? And I know who they are. I can count them on one hand. It's like, then why worry about anyone else's opinion? Why worry about impressing anyone else? So
that's
get back to.
I'm going to dive into that quickly. Let's talk about that. Yeah. Like when you said about you could count on your hands, I think a lot of people are like that. Like I could count on my hand, my true friends on one hand, and people I could truly count on. And these people are in my life. A few of them, if you were to stand us side by side, we have nothing in common, different career paths, they're just good souls. And I try to surround myself with good souls, people that are just good human beings. And it doesn't matter if they're not at my level, they're higher level, they're different religion, different paths, different careers. You try to surround yourself around good people. And in your path of life, you might only find a few of those. So when you do get them, you gotta hold on to them. You gotta hold on to them and hold on to them close to you. You're gonna always have people coming in and out of your life. I'm a strong believer where everybody has a purpose in your life. I always say this to everybody. Whether I meet somebody at a grocery store for 1 minute and I have a 1 minute conversation with them, that there was a purpose for that person to say that thing to me, or it's putting that thought in my eye. Somebody might be in my life for 10 years and something happens where there's an argument, whether we change paths, whether they move, and I never talk to that person again. A lot of people are like, don't you miss that person? And I'm like, no, because they served their purpose in my life for that period. So whether they're there for a month, 5 years, 10 years, I don't ever feel regret of having them in, whether it's a good experience or a poor experience or a positive experience. But I also know when it's time for them to be out of your life, I'm cool with that. Let's move on, because you're going to meet thousands or millions of people. And by the time you're dead, knock on wood, you'll have a long life. So you just have to understand that every person you meet, there's a purpose for them, and just and grasp that. And then when you do grasp that good soul, hold on to them tight.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. There's always something to be learned. I remember senior year, I was at college with some of my buddies. We're going to the beach in New York, and this kid, I mean, he's an amazing dude. He's gone through hell to go through med school and do really well. But we were just kind of sitting there. It was one of those conversations that stood out to me. And he's like, Eddie, I think the vast majority of people in life are replaceable. And I was like, what a sad thing to say. And the more as I've grown and just really reduced my circle to only that core group that reciprocates the love, the positivity, the energy, not yes people, right? People that criticize me when it's warranted, but people that care, like there's a
genuine care.
There we go. Thank you. Yeah. Anyway, so that I think about that a lot, and I don't think I've ever told them I think about that a lot, but I should.
No, I like that you said your parents are a huge part of your life, and my parents are a huge part of my life. Are your parents still in Boston?
They are. Well, Cape Cod.
How long have they been in Cape Cod for?
They have been there. So when we moved from LA, we moved to Cape Cod.
Which part of Cape Cod?
So that was how long ago was that? 2001 maybe?
Which part of
Sandwich? Hyannis, actually.
Hyannis. I was there 2 years ago with my kids. I took my kids there. Cape Cod brought a lot of memories for myself. Like growing up, my father worked for Ford Motors factory, 12-hour shifts, 2 weeks day, 2 weeks nights. I wouldn't see him for 2 weeks, 2 weeks a month. I would never see my father. But one thing my father always did was, and these are just memories of myself, and I'm ranting on somewhere else here, but he would never work weekends. So no matter what, he was always there for the weekends. But with Ford back then, he had incredible vacation, incredible benefits. And he would have he was up to 8 weeks holidays. So in summer, he would take 4 weeks holidays and pack the cars. We're from Toronto, Canada. Pack the car, 12, 13-hour drive off to Cape Cod. We rent a little cottage by the beach, Hyannis, every summer in Cape Cod. And that was something I look forward to, and it's probably our greatest memories. Just me, my sister, my parents, and it's just, and it's such a huge part of that road trip, stopping at little truck stops and eating whatever. It's such a fabric of who I am as a person, and something I can look back to. And it's something now I pass on to my kids, where every year, even if we go to a hot spot or something on vacation, I make sure we have a road trip. I love just getting in the car and just driving 10, 12 hours, whether it's New York, we were in Boston recently, we're just getting in the car and just driving. So I love it. I just ranted on Cape Cod because you said your parents are there right now. That's awesome.
So you were one of the Canadians backing up the bridge, huh? No, that's awesome, man. I'm glad that sort of stuck with you, man.
So how often do you see your parents, or do you try to see them?
Major holidays, yeah.
It's not easy, is it?
It's not. No.
I'm the person where, like, I live right now 30, 35-minute drive from my parents, which is amazing. I jump in the car, I'm there in half an hour, and that's something you appreciate. And it's sometimes it's hard because as an entrepreneur like yourself, or my parents as immigrants, you're moving away from your parents. So still having that is so crucial, because I'm a strong believer where a lot of people will say, when something happens to their parents or whatnot, they'll be like, oh, I wish I did this. I wish I did this. I wish I said this. You know what? If they're alive, make use of the time and don't regret shit after. And that's towards everybody, but in general, especially towards your parents, right? Enjoy whatever time you have with them, because life's so precious, so short, right?
Amen, man. I always talk about this with my co-host of the Books to Business podcast. It's like we heard Jordan Peterson in I don't remember if it was an interview or a keynote now, but he quantifies it. He says, think about this. If you see your parents twice a year, or once a year, which a lot of people do on Christmas, that's 12 times. They're 75 years old now, right? How many, like when you can count off on your finger, it just totally changes your perspective.
Yeah.
So I mean, I couldn't agree more. You have to at least hop on the phone, you know?
Yeah, especially now with FaceTime and stuff like that, you're hoping that the technology is there to assist that. And you know what? A lot of the pandemic has allowed a lot of people that are in their 60s and 70s that never really took on to technology. They're forced to use it now. They're forced to learn it. So it's actually been a benefit to a lot of people. So it's allowed people to start doing FaceTimes and do stuff they never did before. So it's changed who we are as a society. But I think for something like this, for a long distance, it's more of a benefit. Now you can see your grandkids, you can see them on live, you can have a chat with them and stuff, which I think is a positive thing you got to take from this as well, right?
Yeah, it's a great point. I mean, it took a transition that was going to happen over 10 years and made it happen in 2 weeks. So growing pains, but yeah, I mean, there's so much. It's incredible. I mean, my grandmother's on Zoom now.
Like, which is really amazing.
It's cool. Yeah.
So with the pandemic, how life been with Eddie? Like, are you self-isolated? Are you just really focused on creating content now? Like, what are you up to?
Yeah, well, I spend a lot of my time with one of my business partners and one of my producers. So, you know, we're in the same floor of a building here in Hollywood Beach. So I've been able to see them a lot, which is helpful.
So this is your condo or this is your office building?
It's sort of both. It's like the floor of a building here.
Oh, very cool.
So there's,
cool.
Yeah.
So that really helps for creativity and work-wise.
Real luxury. Yeah. Cause I can sort of go into my space and create, and then, you know, obviously come out, run things by these guys, and they're, you know, creative, brilliant minds. And so it's fun to have that. But yeah, I would say overall, I mean, like I said, so much has changed, particularly with the consulting piece and the keynote piece dying down out of necessity, that it's opened doors for, you know, the video creation, the content, podcasting, brand building, exploring things that I couldn't fully focus on. In you know, to answer your question, that is to me the most important thing that I've utilized.
I'm gonna throw this question at you. With your video content, do you guys purchase these video, like this is the actual videos? Do you guys shoot a lot of video yourself? Like, what do you do with it?
Oh man, it's
been a lot of it's a lot of, like, I'm watching some of your videos and it's just a lot of moving pieces. I'm like, how do you guys create all this together, right?
Well, that side of things is essentially just me, and that's something that I've learned to. So, long story short, starting out, I'm a musician too, right? So, I didn't have the money to license stuff. So, what I do is I compose my own background music and create these videos. And then that was one of the first things that once I outsourced, because I don't have 2-3 days to be sitting there arranging and recording music. So that was outsourced. And then it's experimentation. Like, I've done videos where I take my camera out and I go get B-roll all over Key West or Boston or whatever. And, you know, one of the things you learn as a creator is that they don't necessarily do better than stock footage.
Yeah.
As long as the message hits home, the story hits home. And so, you know, for scalability, that's the best way. It's like I write a message, I speak it, I record it, and I have this audio that means the world to me. And then it's like, okay, what visual component will get the job done so I can then move on to the next piece? So it's changed the way I've looked at that component.
Do you dip into the music still, or is this something you've totally pushed away from?
I enjoy songwriting. I do it more as sort of recreation. Like, I'll take a day and just be like, I'm going to write a song today. But in terms of combining it with what I do, rarely.
So with your songwriting, have you been able to get your songs out? Have you been able to sell any songs or anything like that?
There's a few that have been used in indie movies. Actually, not a few. There's one that has been used in a few indie movies. But no, I mean, not really. It was actually one of my greatest lessons. So coming out of the corporate world, I mean, that was the first thing I did. I've been slowly building a studio, and I'm like, all right, I'm going to make this acoustic CD, and I'm going to put my life into it, and it's going to be amazing. And, you know, I spent 2 months creating this little EP that had 5 or 6 songs, 7 songs. And It's terrible. I mean, it's the first time you're engineering music. It's just objectively not good, right? And so I took it, and I used my own money to get CDs printed, and I sent them all over Boston, bars, clubs, all these places, and no one called me back. And that was the first time I'm like, okay, so you can put your life into something and have zero validation. That's how sheltered I was in terms of my growth, because I'd never been that vulnerable and seen that little. And that was my first time where it's like, well, you gotta be good. You have to be very good, and change the amount of energy and effort I put into things.
It's one of those lessons where you fall, but it's a lesson, right? And everything has to be a lesson. You got to take everything as a lesson, because if you fall and get up, and everybody's going to fall. That's just the way. As entrepreneurs, you're never going to have everything perfect. We all know that. So every time you do fall, if you don't at least learn from it or take something out of it, it's completely a waste of a fall, right? So
exactly.
So that's
I like that, a waste of a fall. Yeah, exactly.
They're going to come no matter what, right? Let's dive into so we talked about your creative side with your videos and stuff like that. Is there anything long-term you have for like a short film or anything like that you want to get into, or are you just focused right now on just creating for content for brands and stuff like that?
I do actually. I was talking about maybe a documentary at some point, and I have some silent films and some things like more creative nature kind of buried away on YouTube. But I find that the well that I need to continually go back to, right, is like, if I'm not pushing, like there was last year, I don't know how many, maybe 5 or 6 videos where it's like poetry. It's like literally spoken word, that just, I wanted it to be something different, wanted to push boundaries. And even those, right, that did well, not as well as some of the other stuff, opened doors for me and connected me to folks that, it wouldn't have otherwise happened. So, I just, that's why I always advocate, create like the results don't matter, and you got to be careful with that in the entrepreneurial realm, particularly with business, because results do matter. but it's almost like it has to be an underlying theme. It's like, do it for you. See what happens. Throw something against the wall, see what sticks. Like a lot of people, to your point about perfection, they don't start because they feel like they don't have the answers and they don't know. And it's like, well, that's life, right? Go out there, fail, pick up the pieces and keep going. That literally differentiates someone that succeeds and does something great versus someone that...
I like you said, do it for yourself, because if you're not, as an entrepreneur, if you're not doing it for yourself, my mindset, if you're not enjoying what you're doing, you're never going to pour your heart into it. And if you can't pour your heart into it, you're not going to see the results. If you're not going to see the results, it's just this windfall where you're giving up in a way. So you have to wake up every day. And that's the whole dream of being an entrepreneur. You wake up every day and you love what you're doing. So I love that aspect. You're doing it for yourself. You have to do it always for yourself.
Exactly. What's the point otherwise, right? Ryan Holiday.
I'm starting to do my own motivational here for you.
I love it, dude. Yeah.
Were you saying Ryan Holiday?
Yeah. Well, he paints that picture in a way that really resonated with me. Passion versus purpose. Like truly being into something, giving yourself to something. So passion is like a blast of dopamine. And so passion, being passionate, people that are solely passionate, when things get hard, it might not be worth it to them. Whereas purpose is an understanding that, look, life is ups and downs, it's trials and tribulations. If you are immersed in something, you know that the downs are just a cost to continue 100%. Moving forward. 100%. And I love that. I love the way it was painted.
I'm going to ask you 3 little questions. I ask all our guests. One, if you had another career path or something where you wanted to get yourself into as a young teen growing up, what would it be? Whether it's sports, what career path would it have been?
Maybe military. That may be my only, I don't even want to say regret, but I look back and I question that more than anything else, just coming from a military background. And
do you mind asking, Andy, do you have any brothers or sisters?
I have a brother and a sister.
Are they either of them in the military?
No.
That's it, from your grandfather to your father. Usually, at least one of the children will continue that path, which is, interesting.
Yeah, it was. I mean, they actually dissuaded me from, and it's interesting. It'll be interesting 10 years from now to look back and see how, all those pieces fell into place. Because right now I don't know enough to even be able to comment on it. But it's a spot where I look back and I'm like, damn, like even if it was 4 years,
Yeah.
That would be it. Military, right out of college.
Superpower. If you had one superpower, Eddie, what would it be and why?
Let's see. I think not having to sleep would be pretty amazing.
Just limitless, buddy. That's every entrepreneur's dream.
Yeah, just nonstop, man.
That's every entrepreneur's dream. You sleep when I'll have time to sleep when I'm dead.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Such an inconvenience. That and be able to take a pill and not be hungry. Like those two things. You'd have
that might be coming sooner than later, buddy.
True.
If you were gone today, Eddie, and you had one person in your inner circle that in a few words would describe you, what would you want to be described as?
Someone who was able to inspire others to see the opportunity in life. That to me is my purpose. Like that is my source of contentment when I help people realize that they're never stuck. They're always one move away from transformation, from the momentum needed to just start living how they want to live. And nothing's out of reach. That message means the most to me. I've done it in a way that's far less extreme than some of the people that I help and I talk to. Right? For me, it's not that drastic to go from the corporate realm to the entrepreneurial realm.
Yeah.
But it's the same idea. You're never confined to your reality. You can create it, and that mean the world to me if that's how I was remembered.
Would you have any? You're Mr. Motivation. Is there any key words or anything you want to just say to just people in this pandemic right now, just to get their head straight to end today off with?
Maybe that you're not going to get your time back. I think, and I alluded to this a little while ago. We get caught up a lot in the things that we have no control over. The things that, no one, as much as I'd love this to be true, can make this situation disappear. The coronavirus is here, and hopefully we're, like I said, hopefully we're moving out of it and things are slowly opening back up. But there are always things you can control. And so start from the premise that, you are empowered. You're not a victim. You have things around you, levers that you can pull and you can push, figure out what those are and propel yourself forward.
I'm going to jump one quick little thing on there. You said you're not a victim.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people in situations like this, their way of getting by or just passing through is playing the victim card. They feel if I play the victim card, and they do subconsciously, they don't even realize they're doing it, it's giving a reason for them to be lazy, a reason for them to not push forward right now because they're suffering, they're going through something. So do you want to dive into that right now about not being the victim?
Yeah, let's do it. It's rewarded right now more than it ever has been. Like in our social media realm, political, like it's you get more love from being the victim than the hero in 2020. And it's an interesting thing because it's always easier.
I love the way you said that. That is so true with social media. That is so true.
Yeah, it's sad. It's a sad thing. And it's just so much easier to point out and project because that means you don't have to point in and ask yourself the hard questions. I heard, I don't remember who said it, but if you assume everything is your fault, even if it's, because again, everyone has different hands. Life's not fair, right? But if you assume that everything's your fault, it does one thing. It gives you the keys and it puts you in position to change it. If it's not your fault and it's always someone else's, you are essentially powerless. And so that's where I started. There's a great Chris Rock. He's like a skit, and he's talking about, I used to get so pissed. My car would break down and be on the side of the road. People would drive by me and I'm like, look, I need help. I don't understand, like, how can the world be that way? But the second he gets out and starts pushing it, people pull over to help you push. And so the world wants to help people who help themselves. And that is, I
love that. I've never heard that one before by Chris. That's pretty awesome. That's a really, really cool way
to think right?
Stuff. Yeah, because it's just true. You don't think about it, but people will help you when they see you're trying to put effort into your own life. And one little thing too, we went back about time. I had a guest on the other day, and he had brought up one thing which I thought was so key is we all have an expiry date. So if you got something to do it. Don't procrastinate on it. And that was one thing you brought up as well. Is time is so valuable, right?
Yeah. Tomorrow, the most dangerous word in our vocabulary, right? At least if you said you can't do something, at least you're drawing a fake line in the sand, right? Yeah. The scary thing about procrastination is saying you'll do it tomorrow is that you're not telling yourself no, you're lying to yourself, right? You're creating an illusion that you're making progress when you're not. There's nothing more powerful than starting, even in a small way.
Very good. We're going to end it off there. I greatly appreciate having Eddie on today. Thank you so much, buddy. It's been a great conversation. Learned a lot about you. Hopefully our guests are a little more motivated today. At the end of the show, I'm going to put on all our show notes, contact Eddie, links to his videos, links to his podcast, everything like that to get you guys to reach out to Eddie for any help or any motivation. Once again, I appreciate it. Thank you so much, buddy.
Hey, thanks for the awesome conversation, Jeff.
That's a wrap for today. I want to thank our guest, Eddie, for taking the time out of his busy schedule to be part of the Jeff Knows Inc. podcast. I'm going to put in our show notes all of contact information for Eddie if you guys want to get a hold of him or follow him via social media or check out his website. Once again, thank you for taking your time out of your busy schedule to give us a listen. Like all weeks, if you could, leave us a review, leave us some feedback. 5 stars would be amazing. Until next time, everybody, remember, always move forward.